Let's be brutally honest with each other for a second. You hate your job. I hate my job. We all wake up every single morning, drag ourselves out of bed, and sit in traffic for 45 minutes just to go sit in a gray box and send emails that nobody is ever going to read. We spend our lives daydreaming about winning the lottery, or finding a bag of cash, or just walking out the door and never coming back. But we don't do it. Wait, should I do it? Anyways, we just steal a stapler, maybe take an extra long bathroom break to cry, and then go back to work. We are cowardly. But in 1971, one guy decided he was done with the rat race. He didn't want a stapler. He wanted the whole damn pension fund. Meet Dan, or DB, or whatever this absolute legend's name actually was. He didn't look like a criminal mastermind. He looked like your accountant. He looked like the guy who files your taxes and tells you you can't write off your beer tab. But underneath that cheap suit and those clip-on sunglasses was a man with balls the size of watermelons. He looked at the system, he looked at the FBI, and he decided to play them like a fiddle. Now, before we get into the heist, you have to understand 1971. If you go to an airport today, it's a nightmare. You have to take off your shoes, throw away your water bottle, and get body scanned by a guy who hates his life. But back then, the golden age of flying? It was the Wild West. Airport security was basically a guy standing at the gate asking, "Hey buddy, do you promise you don't have a bomb?" And you saying, "Pinky swear," and them letting you on board with a suitcase full of fireworks and whiskey. Dan took advantage of that stupidity. On November 24th, the day before Thanksgiving, by the way, which is a power move because the airports are chaos, he walks into the Portland airport. He walks up to the Northwest Orient counter and buys a one-way ticket to Seattle. He pays cash, $20. That's it. No ID check, no background check, no credit card trail. He's wearing a dark suit, a perfectly pressed white shirt, and a black clip-on tie. Why a clip-on? We'll get to that later, but let's just say this guy thought of everything. He orders a bourbon and soda while the plane is taxiing. He's lighting up a cigarette because, yes, you could smoke on planes back then, which sounds insane now, and he's just chilling. He's about to commit the most legendary crime in American history, and his heart rate is probably lower than yours is right now watching this video. We are in the air now. Dan is chilling in seat 18C. He waves down the flight attendant, Florence, and hands her a folded note. Now, you have to understand the vibe. In the 70s, flight attendants dealt with drunk businessmen hitting on them constantly. Florence takes one look at this middle-aged guy in a cheap suit and assumes he's just trying to slide into her DMs, or whatever the analog version of that was. She rolls her eyes, shoves the ransom note in her pocket, and literally ghosts him. She just ignored a hijacker. That is how little Riz Dan projected. But he doesn't get offended. He doesn't make a scene. He just leans over, sips his bourbon, and whispers the coldest line in human history. He says, "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." Immediate vibe shift. Florence pulls the note back out. It's printed in neat all-caps letters, very professional. It says he has a bomb and wants her to sit next to him. No screaming, no guns, just polite corporate terrorism. She sits down and he cracks open the briefcase just enough for her to see. Inside, red cylinders, a big battery, and a mess of wires. Did it look like a real bomb? Honestly, it looked like some road flares taped together for a bad science fair project. But are you going to debate the engineering of an explosive device at 10,000 feet? No. You are going to sit there and do exactly what the nice man in the sunglasses says. The plane lands in Seattle. Dan doesn't scream or wave a gun. He essentially treats the pilot like a drive-through window. He places an order for two things. First, $200,000 in cash. But not just any cash. He demands $20 bills. Why? Because hundreds are too light and easily traced, and ones are too heavy to carry. He literally calculated the physics of the money. He did the math. Second, 4 parachutes, 2 main, 2 reserves. This is the genius part. If he asked for 1 parachute, the FBI would assume he's jumping alone. They'd hand him a parachute filled with dirty laundry or an anvil and watch him go splat. But by asking for 4, the FBI panics. They think, oh God, he's going to force the flight attendants to jump with him. They can't risk giving him a dud if an innocent civilian might be strapped to it. They have to give him the premium, safe, military-grade gear. He effectively checkmated the FBI without lifting a finger. So while the FBI is frantically running around Seattle banks on Thanksgiving Eve trying to find 10,000 $20 bills, what is Dan doing? He's chilling on the tarmac, ordering another bourbon. He even tried to give the flight attendant a tip for the drinks. Can you imagine the aura of a man who is actively hijacking a plane, holding the government hostage, but still respects the 20% gratuity rule? That isn't just crime. That is class. The money is loaded. The parachutes are loaded. Dan releases the passengers. And get this, most of them still didn't know they were hijacked. They walked off complaining about airline delays, completely oblivious that they just survived a hostage crisis. Dan keeps the crew and gives the pilot instructions that sound insane. Fly low, gear down, cabin unpressurized. The pilot argues, the plane flies like a brick like that. Dan doesn't care about gas mileage. He is essentially turning a Boeing 727 into the world's largest convertible just so he can jump out of the sunroof. Somewhere over the pitch-black forests of Washington, Dan sends the stewardess to the cockpit and locks the door. He is alone. Outside, it is a horror movie. A massive storm. Rain hitting the glass like bullets. 7 degrees below zero. He lowers the rear stairs. The noise is deafening. A jet engine is screaming in his ear. And this is why he is a legend. Most people panic on a high dive at the pool. Dan stood on a vibrating metal ramp, staring into a freezing, infinite void, wearing a trench coat and penny loafers. No tactical boots, no goggles, just business casual and vibes. He jumps. He vanishes into the night, and the 2 F-106 fighter jets the Air Force sent to tail him. They didn't see a damn thing because of the storm. He literally ghosted the entire United States Air Force in dress shoes. So what happened? The FBI spent the next 45 years playing the world's most expensive game of hide and seek, and they lost. They searched the woods, they dragged the rivers, they interviewed 1,000 suspects, probably including your weird uncle, and they found absolutely nothing. Actually, that's not true. 9 years later, an 8-year-old kid digging a hole for a campfire found $5,800 of the cash rotting in the sand. That's the score, folks. The FBI. $0 found. A random kid with a stick. $5,800 found. Now the FBI will look you dead in the eye and say, oh, Dan definitely died. The jump was too dangerous. He went splat. This is what we call copium. Of course they say he died. They're the feds. They can't admit that a middle-aged accountant in penny loafers beat the most powerful law enforcement agency on Earth. They need you to think he's dead so they can stop crying themselves to sleep. But we think Dan landed, straightened his tie, walked into a diner, and spent the rest of his life on a beach somewhere, laughing at the news. And honestly, in this economy, you kind of have to root for him. He didn't just quit his job, he retired with a severance package he invented. Don't hijack planes, guys. It's rude. But if you do, bring 4 parachutes. Hit subscribe if you hate your job. See you in the next one.